Value added measurement and assessment, an exploration of the history, application, and consequences in American education by Alita Shaw. A long history of educational reform in the United States has led to the present emphasis on the accountability of teachers in student growth by measuring teacher effectiveness. With the requirements of the Race to the Top initiative in 2010, the Value Added Measurement and Assessment Model, developed in Tennessee called the Tennessee Value Added Assessment System, TVAS, came into wider demand in other states and came to be applied as the Educational Value Added Assessment System, EVAS. This paper outlines the history, the model, and the intended and unintended consequences of the TVAS-EVAS system. Value-added measurement has been applied to the field of education since the 1970s. Despite new developments in the field and continuous use in many American public schools since the early 80s, value-added measurement and assessment went relatively unnoticed in the general public and even by many educators. However, the 2010 Race to the Top initiative, requiring states to create teacher accountability systems in order to receive the large federal grants available, brought media attention to the process. Value-added measurement and assessment has significant proponents and detractors in the fields of education, politics, psychometrics, and statistics. The controversy around the process has even attracted the attention of parents, students, and the news pundits. One would be hard-pressed in the America of 2015 to find an individual who does not have an opinion on testing in schools and thus an opinion on value-added measurement. A history of value-added measurement and assessment in American education. In 1957, the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik also launched the beginning of an era of unrest and fear that education in the United States was falling behind the rest of the world. Then, the 1966 Coleman Report highlighted serious inequities in school systems across the country. In the early 70s, following the Coleman Report, economist Eric Hanushek attempted to create a system for analyzing the success of schools and school systems using the input-output model of economics. Holloway, Leibel, and Collins point out that the usefulness of Hanushek's model was limited because some portions of input are out of control of schools and teachers. However, Hanushek did continue to develop the model into the late 70s, attempting to make adjustments to include inputs with cumulative influence. Harris writes in his book, Value-Added Measures in Education, about the impact A Nation at Risk, published in 1983, had on the state of American education. Up until this point, most accountability and analysis had been done using criterion reference testing with simple pre-post-test comparisons. Following A Nation at Risk in 1984, Tennessee Governor Lamar Alexander enacted the Comprehensive Education Reform Act, which included the Career Ladder Program, an early attempt at using teacher evaluation to help improve student achievement. Soon afterward, in 1989, President Herbert Walker Bush invited the governors of all 50 states to participate in a summit, which resulted in the creation of the National Goals for Education, pushing governors across the country to make massive reform in their states. Simultaneously, in Tennessee, several small school districts filed suit against the state to protest the inequity of funding and resources available to schools. Governor Alexander's successor, Governor Ned McWhirter, signed the Education Improvement Act into law in Tennessee in 1982 in order to increase the sales tax to be used for educational funding. A bipartisan push within the state required that a strong accountability provision be included in the law. After enacting the Education Improvement Act, government Governor McWhirter and the Tennessee legislature needed a method to measure how teacher effectiveness impacts student achievement. Since the Colvin Report was published, there had been general consensus in the field of education that effective teaching is the single greatest factor influencing student achievement and success. But measuring that particular element or input had been elusive. An agricultural statistician, William Sanders, at the University of Tennessee, created a proposal previously turned down by the Alexander administration to apply the value-added metric system that he was using in the field of agriculture, specifically crop yield, in response to an article suggesting teachers absolutely could not be evaluated by measuring their students' learning gains. And the Tennessee Value Added Assessment System, TVAS, and the Educational Value Added Assessment System, EVAS, was born. The Educational Consumer Foundation says value added assessment is a form of statistical analysis that can ascertain whether the students taught by a teacher or school or system are obtaining a year's worth of achievement or growth per school. About 10 years after the TVAS system was adopted in Tennessee, the No Child Left Behind Act was passed under the presidency of George Bush as part of the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. The No Child Left Behind Act required both students and schools to meet strict yearly progress goals or face consequences like reduced funding and forced restructuring. Looking for a way to provide measurements so that they could meet the strictures of NCLB, several other states, including North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Texas, eventually adopted the EVAS system. The EVAS system, currently marketed by the Statistical Analysis System, or SAS Corporation, came into greater demand than ever with the implementation of the Race to the Top initiative under President Barack Obama. In particular, the Race to the Top initiative made some types of federal funding dependent on implementing teacher accountability systems that required up to 50% of teacher evaluation scores to be growth measures. States once again turned to the established model of TVAS-EVAS, which stands head and shoulders above others as the industry standard for growth measurement according to the Education Consumers Foundation. In its simplest form, value-added measures measure student growth from one year to the next. Value-added measures, as evolved in the TVAS-EVAS models, use scores from standardized testing for statistical analysis that can ascertain whether the students taught by a teacher, school, or system are obtaining a year's worth of achievement growth per school year, and uses projection modeling to compare predicted scores to actual scores to indicate the need for accelerated progress. The specific statistical model used for the value-added measurement in TVAS-EVAS is called the Layered Mixed Effects Model, or LMEM. The Layered Mixed Effects Model produces value-added measures of school effects by utilizing the information in non-zero covariance between test scores at different times. The Houston Chronicle published the formula as shown on the screen and explains the variables as YIJKL is the test score for the ith student in the jth subject in the kth grade in the 11th year. TIJK times L times T is the teacher effect of the tth student on the ith student in the jth subject in grade K in year L. TEQUI notes that the layered mixed effects model allows the use of incomplete data to measure growth, and the Education Consumer Foundation explains that TVAS-EVAS uses an analytic strategy called blocking to neutralize the starting gate inequalities discussed by Harris. Additionally, the longitudinal analysis, as used by TVAS-EVAS, is designed to mitigate the impact of such factors. Value-added measures like TVOS, EVOS have become more useful and pragmatic as computational technology and data storage have advanced to meet the demands of the statistical analysis and amount of longitudinal data used by these models. Pros of the TVOS-EVOS model. Teacher effectiveness has the largest impact on student growth, and the model focuses on this single factor as improving student achievement. Many sources say that at this time, this is the best statistical model available to the education community. The model allows use of incomplete or sometimes what is called fractured data. The model neutralizes starting gate inequalities. Applied use of the model does result in improved achievement. The predictive nature of the model allows intervention. The model throws light on inequities within districts, systems, and states. Cons to the TVOS-EVOS model. It is a very complicated statistical model that is not easily understood by the layperson. The model does not provide intervention strategies, only predictions of how students may fare. There are some studies that show that simplified statistical models work just as well as the complicated TVOS-EVOS model. There is concern about the lack of transparency of the TVOS-EVOS model for two reasons. One, the complicated nature of the statistical model, and also the proprietary nature of the model. Another con is the heavy reliance on standardized testing. The model is directly applicable to only about 30% of educators because not all educators teach a tested grade level or subject level, meaning that the other 70% of teachers are typically evaluated using composite scores that are based on school-wide data. There is concern about the model because of the tendency of regression toward the mean with small class size. There's concern about whether the relationship between teacher effectiveness and student achievement is actually a causal relationship. Additionally, there's concern about how neutralized the starting gate inequalities are and also what the influence of other kinds of input may be during a typical school year. Some researchers say that the TVOS-EVOS model has what is called a ceiling effect. There is no room for growth in students achieving in the highest percentiles, and for students who have low performance within a low performance level band may not make significant enough progress to influence growth scores. There's concern that because of the TVOS-EVOS model, some schools, teachers, and districts may target instruction to bubble students or those students who score high enough in one proficiency band that raising their level of achievement could move them to the next proficiency level band, thus creating a positive growth score. Many educators have concern on the focus on summative testing and that some teachers and schools may be teaching to the test. Educators also have concerns about the lack of collaboration and an increased sense of competition between teachers because of the TVOS-EVOS model.